Very important news after the closing bell today. Netflix reported earnings after the bell, and the stock is soaring after adding nearly 2 million U.S. subscribers this quarter. Now, joining us to break down the earnings report is Rebecca Walser, investor, advisor, and author of Wealth Unbroken. Rebecca, what is your big takeaway from today's earnings report?
Wow, the subscribers. I mean, the earnings per share and total revenue is completely where we thought it would be, but the subscribers globally is exciting. Beating what we expected by, substantial amounts, over 1 million total subscribers. So the street had expected 1.4 million in US, and we got almost 2 million US subscribers, which I think is really great, because one of the concerns is the US domestic market getting saturated and slowing down. And then the international market also is 560,000 subscribers more than expected. So excellent news on the subscriber, and that was the number that was the most important to all investors today.
And Rebecca, what does the subscriber growth and revenue growth say about the pricing power of Netflix? Of course, we know that they raise the prices in some markets. So what does that say for the staying power of Netflix?
That's a great question. And a lot of the things that we do look at on the US side is that 80% of the content streaming last year was really licensed content. And so you've seen them making these massive plays. We talked about the $300 million deal with Ryan Murphy over from Fox, and you see them making these big strategy decisions on getting people to create content that will really have impact. So what we're seeing is the staying power of subscribers based on unique content, but they do have a long-term worry about, making sure they can still get licensed content on the platform, because that's a concern long-term.
You mentioned Ryan Murphy. Of course, they did outline that as well in the earnings report, talking about some of the overall deals that they have signed recently. We've got people such as Shonda Rhimes that are involved in this, and mentioned Sean Levy as well, and then Genji Kohan. So when we think about some of the producers, some of the executive producers that they're bringing on board, some of the writers that have won awards for other projects, one of the other things you have to think about and pair with this is, sure, you've got the talent, but what about the marketing spend that you're going to have to put forward? Now, we see how that has risen year over year. Does that kind of jump out to you as a cause for concern at all at this point?
Yeah, no, I mean, we see that they've got a $2 billion budget this year for the marketing spend, and that's up from last year substantially. So I think that is something that they are addressing. But, when you throw out these names, you and I know what these people have done, but a lot of people don't. So, obviously Murphy, we're talking about 911, American Horror Story, Glee, and Shonda Rhimes, we're talking about, Grey's Anatomy and Scandal. So these are big names that have done great shows, and I think that Netflix knows now that, they're going to have to really not only get the talent, but also promote the talent and actually let the people know, hey, what we've got coming. And I think that, part of their play, too, is international. They've talked about $8 billion of new content generation this year, and that's 700 shows, and a lot of that is international as well. So I do think that in the U.S. market, they're going to have to really get people hooked. There are a lot of shows that they have people hooked on already, but we'll have to see more shows that are going to get people hooked.
And Rebecca, I want to touch on partnerships real quick. So Netflix partnered with Proximus in Belgium, SFR Altice in France, T-Mobile in the US, and recently also announced a partnership with Comcast. So did anything jump out to you in terms of partnerships for Netflix going forward?
Yeah, I was really surprised with the Comcast deal, only because we saw that Comcast, was sort of moving some of their content off. So the Comcast deal was a great platform, and you see now Netflix trying to broaden their depth in the United States with some of these strategic partnerships. T-Mobile and Comcast directly in the United States obviously is big, and it might mean that we don't get so much U.S. growth slowdown as predicted, and that's what we need to see from Netflix. One thing that concerns me, again, is going back to that last year's numbers. 80% of streaming content in the U.S. domestically was pretty much licensed shows from all estimates. And, with Disney pulling some of their newer content at the end of this year, and you're looking at Time Warner and some others that are saying that they're going to move towards exclusive deals with Hulu, that's the longer term strategy that Netflix needs to address. Is if we can't get licensed content and we don't have enough viewers hooked on our original programming, how do we handle that? And so I think that this Comcast and this T-Mobile is addressing that, trying to get more depth, but they definitely are going to have to deal with the licensed content that is shifting maybe somewhat to Hulu or going towards Hulu.
You know, you hit on this a second ago, Rebecca, and I want to come back to it. International segment now accounting for 50% of revenue and 55% of membership. So they've been successful in growing out their footprint at a global scale. What do you think needs to happen next for them to be able to continue in that and really capitalize on some of the momentum that they've seen as of recent in the international scale?
Yeah, the international growth is where we actually expect all of the growth. You know, the analysts have been projecting that U.S. growth will be a lot less. I mean, this is a shocking report actually from the new subscribes on the U.S. side. 500,000+, you know, overestimate is amazing. And also the international side was also underestimated by 560,000. So all around, the subscribe numbers today are excellent and it's super great. And I do think that the stock is looking potentially up, could be upwards of 350 on this report. But for international, you know, it's interesting. There's just so many untapped markets, right? And there's so many different types of programming that can happen inside the international market. So I think that Netflix has that window and that opportunity for potential to really, you know, basically create the entire growth model for the next 10 years, you know, on this international piece that they're starting to really pick up and go gangbusters on. So it's exciting. I think they know what they're doing on that space. It's each international market is so different. Each country, each programming, each language, everything is so different. So they just have such a vast ability to create new content and speak to those each individual, you know, areas that what will happen. And I think it's a great growth area. So I'm not too worried about the international side. The domestic side is a little more concerning.
Alrighty. Rebecca, we are going to have to leave things there for today, but we certainly do appreciate your time joining us here today on Cheddar to break down all things Netflix.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. That's Rebecca Walser, investor, advisor, and author of Wealth Unbroken. Hey, there you see the copy of her book, the cover of Rebecca's book there.
And that's it today, Chedhead.